to Simply Thick. My name is Liz Fiala, and I'm your moderator for today's live stream. Our featured speaker is John Holahan, SimplyThick President and IDDSI expert. Without further ado, let's pull up a plate and gather around for today's live stream. John, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Liz, and welcome everyone. Super happy to be here today. Lunch with SimplyThick is kind of meant to be a real casual way to get together and talk about all things IDDSI. We like to demonstrate some of the techniques we've learned. This is a process we started a few years ago, and we were rewriting our recipes, and we began to develop these techniques and found that there's a lot of common ways that we can make things that are going to comply with the International Dysphagia Diet Standardization Initiative. And in fact, we found them to be so useful, we put them together in a cookbook. And this book's now available, Modern Dysphagia Cooking, on Amazon. We're very proud of it. It's been a very exciting project for us as we've developed these recipes and learned a lot about how to make things compliant with IDDSI. So whenever I talk about making food with IDDSI, the first thing I need to talk about is using an extremely thick liquid. An extremely thick liquid, this happens to be extremely thick stock. I took some vegetable stock, I made it extremely thick, or whether it's a barbecue sauce. Each of these, what they're going to do is they provide kind of a dual function for us as we're making either minced and moist or pureed food. So if you're making a minced and moist meat, a lot of times when you're mixing it, it's going to be very dry. And then you add the extremely thick liquid, and that takes it from being a minced to being minced and moist. Or if you're doing like a vegetable or a fruit and you have a lot of extra free liquid there, you can take the extremely thick liquid, and that will allow you to sop up the liquid, make it stay in that body so that when you do like the fork drip test, nothing drips out of it. So it stays together. And then when you process to puree, a lot of times, especially with meat, it's very hard to get things to process smooth. And it will just push it around. And then when you add some extremely thick stock to it, all of a sudden it processes right down into that puree. And then you can get that fine texture. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to start and we're going to just show you, it's very easy to make extremely thick stock, which is kind of the base that we use for all of the things we do. And over here I have 8 ounces of vegetable stock that I've already measured out. And I'm just going to, the recipe is that we take 1 dose from the pump for every ounce of liquid. So we're going to do 8 doses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we simply put the lid on, and then I'm going to shake it just for a few seconds. And then I know that I've got an extremely thick liquid in there. People might sometimes ask, well, how do you know? Basically, because I trust my recipe and I know what I've been doing. But if you have questions, you can always do your IDDSI test methods. I can squirt it on here just to show you. When you put it on here, it's going to mound on the spoon. It falls off right away very easily. Can't really do the fork test this way, but it'd be the same type of thing that if you scoop it with the fork, it's going to sit on top of the tines. It's not going to run through there continuously. It can drip a little bit. So that's how we know we have an extremely thick liquid. And whether you're using a stock solution like this or you're using another liquid, because let's face it, when you're making something, sometimes people are going to want, they might want to use another liquid, maybe more appropriate to mix in. So we might want to use something like barbecue sauce or a salad dressing, just depending on what we're making. So you can use any extremely thick liquid with this. Let's take a look. Today we're going to do some pulled pork, and we're going to do some soda, hopefully, assuming we have enough time. So let me get out my IDDSI training cutting board here and talk about this for a minute. So this is something we developed to help, see if I can get the focus to go here, to help people as on their IDDSI journey as they're learning how to make things. Some of these graphics should look familiar to you if you're familiar with IDDSI. And basically what we have here is these are the squares that are 15 by 15 for the level 6 soft and bite size. Right here is 4 millimeters by 4 millimeters, appropriate for your minced and moist tests. And over here we have showing for all 3 of these, the critical test methods to determine if you have a puree, minced and moist, or soft and bite size. So if I bring over my pulled pork, which has been warmed up over here, and I put this on here, the first thing we're going to do is evaluate the size and the softness. So right away, what I'm going to see is these, you might think pulled pork is going to be able to be soft and bite-sized by itself, but I can see right away that these are not. I would have to cut these some more. And something like this, I'm just not, generally, I get worried with pulled pork that there's going to be some tough ends or things like that, that I'm going to be worried that it's probably not going to be something that I can manually process into a soft and bite size. So generally speaking, when I'm dealing with something like this, I'm going to tell people, why don't we just serve minced and moist? Because if you can take soft and bite size, you can definitely take minced and moist. And that way we're going to make sure that we don't have any big, tough pieces in there that are going to be a concern. So to do that, we're going to get out our food processor here. And we're going to put some pulled pork in here to process. Be a little side view here because that's kind of fun for as you watch the food processor go. We'll put our bit of pulled pork in here. Put in a little bit more. And, because this pulled pork has a lot of juice in it already, it may not need any moistening when we get done with mincing and moistening here. So put on our cover. This isn't going to take very much, especially if you have a sharp blade. Do it a couple times. I want to check the sides and make sure that there's not big pieces stuck there. And check underneath the blades and make sure nothing's there. But this is almost done with just those two pulses. So let's take it out in our bowl and then test it out. So what we're going to see here from the overhead view is that you have stuff that's kind of stuck together. Got the right particle size. It fits between the tines. Personally, I think it needs a little more moisture. So this is where you're going to make a decision. If you're making pulled pork for somebody who likes barbecue sauce on the side, you would mix it with some extremely thick stock. If you're going to mix it for somebody who really loves their barbecue sauce blended in there, you might want to consider using barbecue sauce. So in this case, I'm just going to put in some extremely thick stock that we made. And when I blend this together very quickly, you can see it kind of comes together and it just gets a little more stuck together. And to me, that's just a better meaning of the definition of minced and moist. Now, when I test it, it comes off pretty easily. And so that's all you'd have to do to make your minced and moist. Now, when you want to serve this, we always recommend that you do something to shape it. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't, but pulled pork, maybe just because of the way it normally gets served in restaurants and stuff, you probably could get away with just putting it in a disher and just serving it, as a scoop. For demonstration purposes today, I just grabbed one of my ramekins and thought I would make a fancy round shape and hopefully improve the visual appearance, because there is research out there that says when you make stuff that looks a little better shaped, that people are more likely to eat it, even if it's just a geometric shape. So I didn't put in enough spray, but there we have something that looks a little more appetizing than just a plop. So in the next step, let's bring our food processor back. And I'm going to show you how I would make this into a puree. And again, I'm just going to grab some pulled pork, drop that in here. So we'll put the rest in as we're pureeing. There's some liquid in there with it, so, but I don't think there's enough to go all the way down into puree. So I'm going to switch the view for you so you can see it from the side. And I'll hit that. See how it's kind of pushing around? Even though it's blending for a long time, it's not really getting down into that puree status. It just kind of is pushing this around. This is why you need that extremely thick liquid. So I'm going to turn this on and I'm going to add some liquid, and you can just see what a difference this makes. That really begins to process. And it becomes a puree quite quickly. We stop, scrape down the sides again, and I can see this has blended down really nicely into a nice soft puree, which is what IDDSI is looking for. And then you can run your test methods in just a moment. You can run it a little more. Make sure we get all those pieces ground down as small as they're supposed to be. And that's what you would do to end up with a puree. We run a test, comes off the spoon pretty well. Might need to add a little more stock. Sort of depends on your personal opinion as to whether it's too sticky or not, but it's very close to what IDDSI would require. So that's how we would make our level 4 pureed pulled pork. So real quick, let's talk about how we're going to thicken soda. I am going to tip this down just a little bit so you can see a little better. We had the challenge of how are you going to thicken soda and make it so that you have carbonation in there, but not a huge head on top. So what we found is that we need to use 2 cups. We're going to do moderately thick today, so we're going to add 2 doses from the pump over here. I'm going to put that there in this cup, and this is my defoaming cup. And I'm going to put 4 ounces in here, and I'm going to pour it so that some of the foam comes out. These cups are marked, so I know what 4 ounces is. And then I'm going to use a fork or a spoon to vigorously mix for about 5 seconds to release some of the foam. The reason I'm really doing this is because when it's in the can, there's excess foam. This product has been designed and developed so that it has foam for, a while when it's sitting out. And there's more than you need to feel that on your mouth. And we carefully pour from 1 cup to the other. Then we're going to slowly mix for about a minute, and that is going to thicken it. And I find even sometimes I do a figure 8. But the idea here is that we're going to have a small head on top. We've released enough carbonation so that if more carbonation is coming out of here, hopefully it's not too much so you don't end up with just a foam, because one of the things you have to remember is that as you're thickening something, you will stabilize those air bubbles in there. They can't come out. So we've released enough carbonation so that hopefully it isn't too foamy, but not so much that you won't feel it in your mouth. And I can see that it's thick already. What I cannot do is run the IDDSI test, because when you do an IDDSI flow test, you're using a funnel, which has a small diameter nozzle, and those air bubbles will, carbonation bubbles will affect the flow through the nozzle. So Liz, I think that's about 15 minutes here of content. I'm wondering if we have some questions that we can answer.
We do have a question, and that's actually from me. I have a soda question for you.
Okay.
There are some sodas that are very carbonated with lots of sparkling bubbles, and other sodas that seem to be a bit flatter. So have you found that there are any particular brands that are just impossible to thicken, even with SimplyThick?
I have not. Basically, when you go through that 5-second mixing, when you're de-airing a lot of it, what you're doing is you're releasing whatever carbonation there is. So if you have a lower carbonation beverage, it's just not going to release as much. If you have something that's super foamy, like say a beer, it's just going to foam a lot more during that 5 seconds. You are just releasing it, and it works pretty well either way.
Excellent. I'll have to try it a bit more at home as well so that I become an expert like you. Let's see. I'm going to take a look at practice makes perfect.
Exactly.
How does that taste?
It tastes great. Little barbecue sauce on top of the pulled pork, minced and moist.
Excellent. Now, if we had time to make a full meal, what do you suggest serving that with?
Any vegetable would work. Put some broccoli on there. Do some mashed potatoes. You got to watch mashed potatoes, make sure that they don't become thick and sticky. So, but with IDDSI, you have these simple test methods where you can just take a scoop with your spoon and test it as you're serving it and as you're eating it to make sure it doesn't become too sticky. And if it does, then you just add some more butter, add some more moisture. mix that in, blend it so that it's soft again.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed seeing how you use the barbecue sauce or the stock to add that moisture and thicken it in without losing the integrity of the flavor of the food. Now, big question on that, the bottle that you use, did you make that yourself or is that something that people can buy?
You mean this bottle?
Yep, that's the one.
These are just store-bought squeeze bottles. I think I got these at the GFS store locally, and then our marketing department at SimplyThick has made these nice little stickers so that we can label bottles. If you wanted some stickers, I'm sure we could find some for you. But pretty much that's all we do. You could just write on there with your normal marker too.
Great. So it's nice and simple. Anyone can do it at home, especially if they're adding in more moisture to their food items on a daily basis.
Yep. Yep.
Wonderful.
One of the beauties of using extremely thick stock is that it's so subtle that it doesn't really disrupt the flavor. So whether I'm eating the minced and moist or I'm eating the puree, the flavor still tastes just like pork.
Which is the end goal. I mean, that's really what we're going for, is to make sure that anyone who's suffering from dysphagia or any related issues can still have that quality of life with those wonderful meals, the flavor, and a little bit of texture in there as well.
Exactly. It's meant to be that way. It's, when we're using, I guess we could have used water, just use extremely thick water, but we kind of felt like that feels like you're diluting the food rather than adding something to it. So we just use some stock solution to just make it feel like we're adding a little bit of flavor and not diluting it as much. But, the idea is to give something that has the flavor. And when you think about the IDDSI food pyramid, it really is kind of like looking at people's ability. You start with regular food, and then you go to soft and bite-sized, and then minced and moist, and then puree. And those are all processes we naturally go through as we chew food. You start with a piece of pulled pork in your mouth, and as you're chewing it, you get it down to that minced and moist size. It's almost ready to swallow. It's blended with your saliva. It's already there. And then you keep processing to the puree where you can basically swallow without eating, without chewing. So when I take the puree, it is swallow ready. I don't have to chew it if I don't have the ability to do that, but I can just swallow it. And so we are kind of substituting the equipment in the kitchen for what you would normally do with your mouth and your tongue and the oral processing.
That makes perfect sense. Now, do you find with certain meats that you don't need to add more moisture in if the meat is perhaps a naturally fattier meat?
I feel like I could come across that, but I just personally have not. And it's probably because I'm just not a good enough cook to make things soft enough to just process on their own without having some added liquid to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the true problem here, is that I just get impatient and I cook it past that really soft and tender spot.
Got it. And
So
am looking
this puree is really yummy, and I don't have to chew it at
you.
all. It's just, I get that flavor. It's just like the pulled pork I have here in minced and moist, or if I had any left that I hadn't processed, it would all taste the same. And that's the beauty of these techniques, is you can get things that eat just fine.
Mm-hmm. I'm just taking a moment to look through our social comments as well. We do have a few people who have joined us across the board, from a couple on LinkedIn, a few on Facebook, and we do have 2 watchers on YouTube as well. So anyone out there who's watching, you are welcome to submit a comment or question if you have any inquiries about what you're seeing today.
Well, if you don't have any questions, I guess, why don't I grab something out of the fridge and I can pick in something else to just demonstrate that.
That would be fabulous.
Might as well take the time to demonstrate some techniques, huh? So let's switch back over here to the side view. And I just have some Gatorade. You grab a cup. So mixing and thickening things is kind of like the base of what we do. And, you know, whether you're going to do 4 ounces or 8 ounces, we'll just do 6 ounces and we'll do a slightly thick. How's that sound? And so you just take your Gatorade here, grab a spoon. The formula for slightly thick is to take 1 dose for 6 ounces. It's not quite half the strength. And then you just mix. And then because of IDDSI, we have test methods that allow us to check it and make sure that we have thickened it appropriately and that it is the level that you want. One of the beauties of IDDSI is that you have a language test methods that everybody agrees upon, whether it's the clinician who has diagnosed the person and given them a diet order or the person at home. The idea is that we have exactly the same test methods, tools, and capabilities available to us so that we can test things and make sure that we're serving things appropriately. So this doesn't take very long. I know sometimes when I do these demos, there's people who aren't familiar with the way things have been over time, and they'll say, wow, that takes a long time. And I say, well, you know, it's really that you're just not used to it, because compared to what we used to do, that's pretty quick. So IDDSI has this new tester. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It's the funnel rather than using 2 syringes. And you simply fill it up and you don't have to use a second one. So it's really kind of nice. I used this about twice in my life and then decided I was no longer doing syringes. Grab a timer here. And then you run your flow test for 10 seconds to see how thick it is. It's already printed on the syringe. It will tell you how thick it is. And it will confirm for you that you have the right thickness level. So hopefully you can see that at home. And we have, that is in between the 1 and the 4, so that is slightly thick, successfully thickened. Very quick and easy, very nice to do. If we want to go to the other extreme, we can do extremely thick, which is just like extremely thick stock. We measure out our 4 ounces. Remember, with extremely thick stock, it was 1 dose per ounce, so that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we'll just use the same spoon as the slightly thick. Now, when you do extremely thick, it's not going to flow through the syringe, so you have to do 2 other tests. You have to do a fork test and a spoon test to validate the thickness level. And you know, I can feel it getting thick already. I don't know if you can really tell looking on the side, but you know, this thickens quite quickly. And you can see it's mounting on top of the spoon. Turn it sideways, it flows right off. Grab a fork here. And with the fork, you scoop it up. And you see how it kind of hangs. It'll kind of flow through a little bit. That's okay, but it's generally staying on there. It's not flowing continuously through there. So that way, you know, you have a level 4 thick liquid. And whether you want to eat it with a spoon or you want to drink it, still tastes like Gatorade. It's good stuff.
You know, I would actually eat that with a spoon. It looks like a refreshing snack to me.
Yeah, we used to call this pudding thick. So, you know, when it's pudding thick, you can spoon it. And they generally say that, you know, you can't really pour it very well. With a pseudoplastic thickener like xanthan gum, things do pour even though you wouldn't expect them to. So that's why you can usually drink this out of a cup. But a spoon works too. Any other questions?
You know, we don't have many questions today. It's a quieter day. So I'm trying to think of the best questions on my end. But as anyone knows, when you work so much with a product, sometimes we're too in the woods with it. So I think I'm question out on my end. Let me do one more check across our platforms to see if there are any outstanding questions or comments, and then we'll wrap it up for the day.
Okay.
And for those watching out at home or in your car or wherever, in your car if you're not driving, that is, Feel free to comment and leave questions after we've ended the live as well, because this recording will live on our social platforms and we'd love to engage with you more even after the recording has ended.
So June is Dysphagia Awareness Month. So there's a lot of things going on this month that, whether it's us, or the NFOSD, or things like that, we're trying to get the word out so people are aware of what's going on, that there's this disease that's out there, helping raise awareness to people and their issues. One of the things I try to do is always, make these things understandable so people understand why we're doing it, understand that we're trying to make things better so that it isn't anything that you really have to hide from very much, or there shouldn't be a stigma to it. I spend a lot of time on social media making videos showing thickening liquids and processing food and things like that, just to raise the awareness of it. You will also find that there's giveaways out there and a lot of attention, hopefully, to this the issues around dysphagia and swallowing problems.
Thank you, John. And we do have one question from LinkedIn. This user says, where can we get the funnels?
Yeah, so IDDSI has a website where you can order the funnels if you want to order them in a quantity of 100 or more. I think it's called like Eat Safe Swallow something. If you go to their website, you can find the link. When they were first coming out with them, I promised Peter Lamb that I would make these available to people in smaller quantities. So we resell them on our website. I think it's 10 for $25. The cost of the funnels from IDDSI is high enough and postage is high enough that even at that price, we're really not making any money. But if you go to our website, you can order a pack of 10 of these. We'll ship them right to you, and then you have them. They are dishwasher safe. Somebody at IDDSI ran it through a dishwasher several hundred times, and the letters and the numbers and the things never rubbed off. With the disposable single-use syringes, you'll find that they rub off very quickly. You don't find that with these. They last basically forever. I've been using the same 10 or 15 around here for months and haven't replaced any of them. So whether it's a commercial dishwasher or a consumer dishwasher, they're fine.
Wow, that's really quite impressive, actually, that the numbers have not faded yet, even after 100 washes or so.
Yep. That was one of the things that IDDSI wanted to make sure, is that when they had these made, that they would be durable and long-lasting. So we get these direct from IDDSI, and then we redistribute them for them.
Wonderful. And John, that was our only question for the day. So
Okay.
I think we will go ahead and wrap it up.
Sounds good.
Everyone who is watching, thank you so much for joining today's Lunch with SimplyThick. We go live every first and third Friday of the month on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And if you're not able to join us live, we invite you to watch our recorded streams, and you can continue to leave comments and questions for us. We'll see you all in 2 weeks. Stay tuned to our social platforms for more details. Have a great